I spend quite a bit of my year preparing for winter. Between making sure that I bring in firewood into the house so that we have access to wood in the middle of a snowstorm, or if the power goes out, we always keep wood stacked. To gardening and canning in the summer to make sure that we have food in storage in our basement. And in addition to those activities, I also like to prepare my bookshelves to get ready for winter. We live in a pretty rural area, and traveling to the library is not something that we can always do in the winter. And so I like to make sure that we've got books that we are looking forward to reading that are here. And so as the first step for preparing our bookshelves, I first clean the books and clean the shelves. You want to make sure you get behind your books and on top of them. And then I also do a clean out. And that means making sure that we're happy with all of the books that we have on our shelf, that we want to continue to keep those because shelf space is at a premium in our homeschool family home. For the first shelves that I decided to organize in preparation for winter were our homeschool shelves and our middle grade shelves. So I thought that if I'm working on our middle grade shelves, it would be a perfect time to gather some middle grade wintry themed books and share those with you. So many of these are recommendations. They are books that I have read. A few of them, which I'll disclose, are ones that I have not read, but that we are hoping to read this coming winter season. My first stack are older books. As far as publication date, they definitely have that old-timey language and feel, and we love them very much. So the first one that I'm going to recommend is The Golden Road. This is actually the second book in the Story Girl series. I don't necessarily think that you have to read them in order. They're just, each chapter is like its own little vignette following this group of children. And it talks about a blustery day when the children decide that they are going to endure the winter season by publishing a magazine. Each chapter is like its own little story, and some of it is about the past, some of it is about the present, and it's just really sweet. And the story girl herself as a personality really does follow L.M. Montgomery's style of female heroines that are strong in character, and it's just lovely. So next we have Skating Shoes by Noel Streatfeild. I grew up with all of the shoe stories. This is my original copy from the 80s. In this, we follow a young girl named Harriet who has an illness and loses her strength, and the doctor prescribes doing skating, and her family has to sacrifice and scrape and save, but they eventually can save up for lessons, and she takes on skating. And so it gets into competitive ice skating and family desires versus an individual's desires, and just a really great classic story. Okay, next we have Maggie Rose and Her Birthday Christmas by Ruth Sawyer. In this, we follow Maggie Rose, whom I love. She's very enterprising. I will say some people say they're frustrated with her family because her family comes off as kind of being lazy and not really into working, but there's a little bit of a mystery, and she is just a determined young lady. It does follow a longer time period than just being at Christmas, but I just think this is a sweet Christmas book. Next, we have The Family Under the Bridge by Natalie Savage Carlson. This is another Christmas story. It's very thin. This is a perfect read aloud for younger kids. We read this as a family together and loved it so much. Just a sweet little story about an older man who is on his own, and then a family who are in poverty, kind of how their lives intertwine. The Children of Green Know by Lucy M. Boston. This is also a fantastic Christmassy, wintry book, and it is actually our book choice for the Cozy Reader Book Club for December, so I can leave the information below for that. And my co-leader in this, Jen, has said that the audio book for this is fantastic. So if you don't have time to grab the book, find the audiobook and listen to it. I think that's what I'm going to do for the book club. But in this, we follow a young boy who goes to his grandmother's house for the Christmas season. And there are just mysterious things that are happening in this house. And this boy, what's his name? Tolly, not Tommy, Tolly, is kind of like intrigued by this, and he works to uncover the mystery. I remember his grandmother being so wonderful in this. I know sometimes in middle grades, the parents or adults are like out of the picture or are not really supportive, and I just thought she was fantastic as well. Next is Nancy and Plum by Betty MacDonald of the Mrs. Piggle Wiggle fame. This is not nearly as humorous as Mrs. Piggle Wiggle. This is really, in my mind, kind of pulls on your heartstrings. It's about two girls who are orphans, kind of. They have a caretaker, but he's really out of the picture, and they really are not treated well. And so they decide to run away. So it does have, this version has illustrations in it, just as a lot of Betty MacDonald's books do. But I do remember this kind of being wistful in nature. And so it's not the coziest, most cheerful book, but some people are into that at Christmas and looking for that. And so it really does end well and sweetly. There's even pictures in the back here of Betty MacDonald and her family. Anyway, if you are interested in a not tearjerker, but a book that really makes you have big feelings, look into Nancy and Plum. The next is The Children of Noisy Village by Astrid Lindgren. I love Pippi, and even more than Pippi, I love Ronia. But this story is about life of 6 Swedish families. I think there's actually 6 children, and some of the children in the same family, but just some really cute stories. There's a grandfather in here who's hard of hearing. Here he is. And he's like an important character, but it's just about their life. And it is sort of set in cold times and having fires. Here's one about the big snowstorm. So just a very cold, atmospheric little story. And again, perfect as a read aloud for your kids. Last, we have Snowbound with Betsy by Carolyn Haywood. Any of those B for Betsy stories I love, and this one is especially sweet. In this, there's a huge snowstorm that hits their area, and it really kind of puts a damper on their normal activities. So they're not watching TV, they're not, able to use, I think, electricity, and they're having to find a little bit more organic ways to entertain themselves. And then I think they start to get concerned if the snowstorm will impact Santa's arrival. So just, your typical really sweet, cute story that Betsy is involved in. So those are all kind of the older style books. The next stack are more modern ones. So we have, and by modern, this one's in the 1970s, which is the decade I was born in. So we're not going to call them older. These are more modern. So The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper. This is a Newbery Honor book. It is a series. There is a book before this, but it's, I think, hard to find. In this, Will Stanton is in the 12 Days of Christmas, and it's called a fantasy, but it does feel a little sci-fi as well, because I think there's actually movement within different kind of worlds, for lack of a better way to put it. But there is a menacing evil character that is out to destroy all that is good. And so there really is this metaphor of the battle of good and evil in this. It is thin, but it's pretty dense with those fantasy elements. I have not read the rest of the series, but I do have them on my shelf, and I'm hoping to get to them soon. But I just thought this was a great read for that 12 Days of Christmas, December into January timeframe. This is by Madeline L'Engle. This is 24 Days Before Christmas. I think this was pulled out of the Austen family book series, and they just pulled this Christmas story out. This is huge print, perfect little quick story. You could really read it in a night with your kids if you are interested. But it's the same idea of a baby that's coming at Christmas, and will it impact, the Christmas celebrations. And I love Madeline L'Engle, her fiction and nonfiction. And so this is just a sweet story to just read really quickly. in that Christmas season. This is perfect for cold season. This is The Golden Compass by Phillip Pullman. This is the first book in a series. So this is definitely for your older middle grade kids and very young adults, because there are some kind of terrifying aspects to this. So in this we follow Lyra, and Lyra lives in a college. Basically, she's kind of has the run of the school, of the academy, and her uncle returns. So she ends up having to leave the college and go up north in a quest type of story. And she ends up in this really awful struggle between a witch. And again, the witch part of this book I remember as being pretty terrifying, but it is really your classic children's fantasy book. And once she gets north, it's just really perfect with that cold feeling. Another one that's good for cold times is The Sight by David Clement-Davies. This, again, especially because of the thickness, this really is your much older middle grade or young adult. So this is an animal fantasy and really has incredible world building. And again, because we are talking about wolves and remote castles and mountains, the setting of where the wolves lives just really feels perfect for that winter season. And in this, we follow packs of wolves. Some of them are large packs and very connected. Others are smaller. And then there's also the evil witch, Morgra. Morgra does not have good intents. She has these special abilities that make her a threat to the wolves. So we go into some exposition of how she ends up getting there. We are in the heads of the wolves. There is a fear of man. It's just a very well plotted out fantasy that is perfect for this time of year. So next in chronological order is True Gift by Patricia Maclachlan, who wrote Sarah Plain and Tall. This story, when I read it, it is a tearjerker, but only because it's so sweet. So if you are looking for that saccharine sweet, happily ever after story, this is absolutely it. Again, it is an easy, quick read that you could read in a night with your kids, and it's wonderful. Winterfrost by Michelle Houts is my oldest's favorite reread book for the Christmas winter season. She reads this every single year and has for years. So this follows the tradition, the Swedish tradition of having a house Nisa who it's very similar to like the concept of like, I think like a brownie. You see it a lot in Slavic folklore as well as Swedish, where you have kind of these little creatures that you can't see who take care of things in your house. You know, make sure that the mice are kept at bay. And your job is to leave them out little food treats. And one of the girls in this forgets to leave out a treat, and it causes a whole bunch of turmoil for her family because the Nisa gets angry and leaves. So it says on the back, take care of your Nisa and your Nisa will take care of you. So just a really cute story. Next is Winter House by Ben Guterson. This is, first of all, a wonderful copy. I talk about this book probably every year, but this satisfies that puzzle figuring out itch that that books like The Green Glass House do. And in this we follow a young girl who comes home from school, I think, and there's like a letter and a train ticket on the table that says, hey, we went on vacation. She's an orphan. She's being cared for an aunt and uncle that neglect her. Hey, we've gone on vacation. You need to go to this location, and there's a train ticket for Christmas. And she goes and she arrives at the Winter House, which is run by a very eccentric older man. She does make friends there as well, but her whole passion is to uncover puzzles. And some of them are like sanctioned puzzles that this eccentric man has asked her and her friend to figure out. But some of the puzzles are forbidden. And it can actually be a little bit creepy, to be honest. There's like midnights in the library where it's dark and creepy things are happening. And actually the denouement is a little bit frightening as well. So again, this is probably not as old as the site would be or the Golden Compass, but we read this as a read aloud with the kids, listen to it. And so I think that helps when you're all listening to it and can kind of support each other in the like, wow, this is kind of creepy part. But it is set over the Christmas break, and it is set in a cold setting. And so it's perfect for this time of year. Next, I have The House with Chicken Legs by Sophie Anderson. So this book is in that Slavic folklore tradition about Baba Yaga and the house with the chicken legs. And the House with the Chicken Legs is set in a very cold area, again, because of the Slavic folklore nature. And it's just fun. I think everyone should be familiar with this tale of the House of Chicken Legs. It's in so many young adult and adult retellings, but I just think this version is really marvelous and really opens up your eyes to this story and kind of the heart at what the Baba Yaga House of the Chicken Legs tale really is about. And then next we have Ember and the Ice Dragons by Heather Fawcett. If you've been here anytime at all, you would know of my love for Heather Fawcett's books, and her middle grade books are no exception. So in this, we follow a young girl who is actually a dragon. She has a father who has magical abilities, and he has transformed her into a girl in order to protect her. And as she hits puberty, basically, she starts to like kind of combust, and things are catching fire around her. And so he decides for her safety, he's going to send her to a cold climate. And so she goes down to Antarctica, and her aunt is there as a scientist. And she uncovers this huge political plot involving humans and dragons, and it's magnificent. I will say there are discussions in there about hunting and animal protection, and so it kind of is a pretty serious content and discussion, but just done in a very careful manner. I love Heather Fawcett's ability to really just kind of plunk her readers down into the setting, and you just really feel like you're there. And so most of the book is set in Antarctica in this science world, and it's just really incredible. The descriptions of, school there and eating there, and then of course traveling in that area. It's just really wonderful. Next, I have The Clockwork Crow by Catherine Fisher. This is a pretty thin book. I do definitely have to confess that the whole reason why I even bought this is because of the cover and even the back. It just looks lovely. So this is a fantasy tale. This is kind of a Welsh folklore tale, and it's about a young girl who is an orphan also, who ends up going to this mansion, and it's like there's missing family, and the servants are talking about fae and the fair folk who have come and taken people. There is this clockwork crow you can see with the key in its back, and so there's some of this like steampunk mechanical aspects to the story of having to take things apart and put things together and figuring out puzzles. It really is descriptive tale as well as a cautionary tale, and again, pretty thin and very solid setting of coldness and winter themes. These are two that I have not read, but we have Septimus Heap, Book 1 of Magic by Angie Sage. So there's some mystery where Septimus, who is the seventh son of the seventh son, ends up disappearing one night, and there is a young girl who is found instead in the snow. There's a map. And so the father, who is now missing his seventh son, ends up taking the little girl home with them, and raises her, but then there's a question about, well, who is she versus where did the seventh son go? So I've heard really great things about this series. It's a huge series, so this is the first book in that. But the fact that you're finding children in the snow is just set in this, the first chapter is something in the snow. Just seemed like it would be a good book to read over the winter. And then we have The Timeless Travelers. This is the first book of the Gideon trilogy by Linda Buckley-Archer. And I actually found this trilogy in a little free library this summer. And it involves time travel and children traveling into the 1700s. I think they end up getting stuck there, but it starts in December. So I thought that would be a good book to read. I would hope that when they do get into 18th century London, that is also cold. Like, I don't know, I always hear about the Thames freezing over during that time, and so hopefully there'll be ice skating on the Thames, but we'll see it. Because I am hoping to get to these two books sometime in the next few months. And then my last two suggestions, we have Edith Pattou, North Child. It's by Usborne, and so I think this is technically a middle grade, but I think the themes in it are definitely for your older middle grade and young adult. But this is a retelling of East of the Sun, West of the Moon. And in my opinion, it's the best retelling. I've read a few. I love that it stays true to having a troll involved. But without giving too much away, there is a girl who ends up being promised to a polar bear. And she ends up being taken away to go and live in this polar bear's castle, and it's cold there. There's the polar bear. There is a secret about this polar bear and his castle area. The young girl needs to figure out what that is. Her meddling, while it is an attempt to solve the problem, actually ends up making it worse. So if you haven't read the East of the Sun, West of the Moon tale, this will be full of surprises. If you know it, I just really love how true to it stays, and I do again love that cold setting that Edith Pattou really sits in. The next is The Shadow of the Bear, and this is by Regina Doman. I have mentioned this multiple times. This is Snow White, Rose Red retelling in a very modern way. So we've got young girls, the father's missing, they're living in an apartment with their mother. They are living in poverty, but it does have a high school setting, again, modern high school setting. There is romance in this, so again, I would say this is definitely young adult level. It is chaste. It is a Catholic author. This is one of my favorite retellings of this story. And the setting of it just is perfect for sitting by the fire and cozying up as you read about the bear. I would love to hear what of these books you've read and enjoyed, or maybe what of them you are going to try to find at the library to read this cold December, January season. And if you have any to suggest, please feel free to leave those in the comment below. Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.